Gleich nach dem Kriege, als ich von Deutschland nach den Vereinigten Staaten, right after the war, when I came to this country from Germany, I heard quite often, why didn't you surrender? The United States is my country now, and if war ever happens, I will have to fight for it. I just would fight, and that's the way I raised my boys.
In 1944, Ludwig Vogel fought for Germany at Anzio, Italy. He was a sergeant in the 145th Grenadier Regiment and a group leader of infantry. Today, he's the assistant manager of a grocery store in California. Paul Schrader is a sound engineer also living with his family in California. In 1943, as a corporal and an artillery spotter in the U.S. Army's 3rd Division, he too came to fight at Anzio.
Sometimes you look around and you ask where a man was, and they tell you he was killed, or he stepped on a mine, and they had to take him away. It's a funny feeling when you see that the group is starting to get smaller.
In the bloody Battle of Anzio, the lives of Ludwig Vogel and Paul Schrader came together for a brief moment. 2 fighting men, one German, one American, relived that moment in history. I'm Jim Bishop. By January 1944, the Allies have overrun Sicily, have captured Naples, and are heading north. 60 miles south of Rome, they are stopped as the Germans throw up a rugged defense called the Gustav Line, cutting across the Italian boot. The armies become locked in interminable battle. The Allies plan a bold stroke, an end run by sea. An Allied landing north of the line outflanking the Germans could cause the main line to twist, maybe collapse. Attention now zeroes in on a strip of beach 30 miles above the line's left end, the beaches of a little fishing town called Anzio. Now into the Allied-held port of Naples move 110,000 men, troops of the American 3rd Army Division, the British 1st, paratroopers, commandos, rangers. Designated the 6th Army Corps, they will make up the force for attack. Operation Shingle, as the landing is now called, has swelled to an attack of major proportion. Landing craft are a special problem. In short supply and in great demand because of the planned Normandy invasion, they are on loan only through February. The attack date for Anzio, therefore, is set for January 22nd, 1944. The American 5th and the British 8th launch an all-out frontal attack on the German Gustav Line 1 week before Anzio. In Rome, the commander of the German forces in Italy, Field Marshal Kesselring, is confronted with a dilemma. Responsible for defending the long Italian coast against any Allied invasion, he has long maintained 2 divisions of reserves near Rome, ready to move quickly against any landing by sea. Now, submitting to the urgent requests of his hard-pressed field commanders, he cashes in his insurance. His last reserves are sent south to hold the Gustav Line. January 21st, 35,000 men of the Allied 6th Army Corps step aboard the transport ships at Naples. Anzio is 90 miles north. The morning of January 22nd, the great fleet of 253 ships approaches the beaches of Anzio. On one of these ships is a boy from Detroit, an artillery spotter in the 3rd Division, Corporal Paul Schrader.
I'm the only guy from the Midwest in my outfit. Everyone else is an Easterner. And they all think the West is anything beyond Jersey. No matter where they go, they're always talking about back there. I keep thinking about all those rumors that we'd get to go home after the African invasion. But from where I see it, I guess they weren't true.
To the amazement of the invaders, their opening barrage goes unanswered. As the ducks and LCTs take the men in, they are met only by an empty beach. The first troops land without even getting their feet wet.
It seems like the Germans are caught off guard. I think we must have lost more men during the practice than we're losing during this invasion. It certainly wasn't any secret. The street vendors were actually selling pictured postcards of Anzio before we left. In fact, I sent some of them home.
The objectives of Operation Shingle are to establish a beachhead and then advance only to the Alban Hills, commanding the approaches to Rome. Although the way ahead appears open, the whole 6th Army Corps is ordered to dig in. Overhead, Allied fighters and bombers go in to hit bridges and road crossings. They will fly 1,200 sorties on D-Day alone. Although Kesselring's reserves are far from the scene, he reacts swiftly. 3 hours after the invasion, he orders Luftwaffe anti-aircraft batteries, the Hermann Goering Division, and every other available reinforcement thrown into a cordon around the beachhead. The Luftwaffe arrives on the scene first. Finally, on D+3, the 6th Army Corps is ordered to expand the beachhead. While the British 1st moves toward Campoliona, the American 3rd strikes out for Cisterna. Beyond lie the Alban Hills and Rome. Blocking the way, a German army, hastily thrown together but 40,000 strong. One of the soldiers barring the 6th Corps road to Rome is an infantry group leader of the 145th Grenadier Regiment, Sergeant Ludwig Vogel.
The men come to the front from all over, from furloughs or from hospitals, or they are lost from some units that don't exist anymore. Reinforcements are being brought up slowly. The Allies have bombed the railroads. I even had to hitchhike to get here. I'm put right into the front line.
Ten days after the invasion, the American 3rd Division has suffered 3,000 casualties. February 3rd, Under orders from Hitler to lance the abscess south of Rome, the Germans massed all available troops, now more than 90,000, for a full-scale counterattack. Trying for another Dunkirk, they are ordered to drive the Allies into the sea. 0 hour for the attack, 11 p.m. Counterattack roars to a crescendo. Nearly 6 divisions of troops, infantry, parachute, and armored, including the crack Panzer Division, are hurled against the Anzio pocket. For 2 weeks, under constant shelling and fighting at point-blank range, the troops slug it out.
I think the Germans would rather die shooting. They've got machine guns every 10 feet. And if one of their men falls, they've got a fast way of picking him up, and another guy crawls right up and takes over. They're dealing out a lot of casualties, but they're replacing them faster than we can shoot them.
The German soldier is trained to the point that he doesn't have a chance to think too much. He has to follow orders. He doesn't give up if he doesn't have anything to eat for a week. Whatever happens, he keeps on fighting.
Every day, Allied battle maps look worse. Under constant bombardment, the 10 by 12 mile pocket is steadily shrinking. One German thrust drives 2 miles into the beachhead. In just 4 days, the Germans suffer more than 5,000 casualties. The Americans nearly 4,000. The Allies order every bomber in Italy to the Anzio front. The saturation bombing closes the breach. March 1st, the Germans call a halt. Weary troops, cold, wet, and hungry, German and Allied, dig in and wait. Too exhausted to win.
Mostly the holes are shallow. If you dig down very far, you reach water. We are close to the ocean. Since it's raining so much, the water comes in from below and above too. And the moment it starts, we have a common problem, we and the Allies, to get the water out of our holes. So at a moment like that, the firing stops. Nobody shoots at anybody. Nobody speaks to anybody. We just all take care of this one problem.
Sunny Italy. It must be some kind of a gag. It rains 6.5 out of every 7 days. It's the worst I've ever seen. Our tanks are sinking into the mud. Our guns are sinking into it. If we get consolidated by anything, it's going to be by mud. The Germans are dug in now, and they really know how to do it. It seems like they've got all the advantages. They're controlling the hills, and they really are throwing up a defense.
We always seem to be hungry up here. A couple of days ago, I was lucky enough to find a can of mixed pickles. I was so hungry, I ate the pickles without anything. Days go by when we get nothing at all. Sometimes I think everything is against us. We don't have enough ammunition to fight with. We don't have enough food to survive. There are some doubts in my mind, and in the minds of quite a few German soldiers, if we have a chance to win the war.
We're trapped for so long, it's difficult for a fighting man not to be moving. Just fighting and not moving, the morale begins to get low. You just see casualties and you're not accomplishing anything.
As the weather clears on March 2nd, the Allied Air Forces staged the biggest air attack of the campaign. Nearly 1,000 fighters and bombers come in to smash German strong points. The end of the bombing marks the end of German hopes for another major counteroffensive. By the end of March, more than 120,000 Allied soldiers are jammed into the fire-ringed pocket they call Hell's Half Acre. They can't break out, but they are holding down 135,000 German troops desperately needed on other crumbling fronts. For nearly 3 months, both sides fight a defensive battle. The lines are tried, penetrated, and sealed again. The big attack gives way to the small skirmish, and men die individual deaths.
The front is a very jagged line. It goes back and forward, sometimes 100 meters apart, sometimes 10. You're dug into holes, sometimes 2 or 3 men in a hole. There's no time to dig trenches.
Sometimes it's pretty hard to tell how we're doing. We all hear what's called routine rumors about how the other outfits are doing. Sometimes we hear that the Germans are breaking through, and sometimes that we're breaking through. When you're batting for yards, and sometimes even inches, it's hard to tell.
For the encircled men of the Anzio pocket, it's a time of constant bombardment. One of their chief tormentors is a monster railway gun, called Leopold by the Germans and Anzio Annie by the Americans. It hurls 11-inch shells into the beachhead with devastating effect.
Now that we're pinned down real good, they start lobbing the shells in. One of them they hit us with is a monster, a 280 millimeter shell. And nobody can figure out where it's coming from. Well, some of the guys think they're backing the gun into a tunnel every time our planes come over. Jammed in so tight, the Germans don't even have to take aim. They just keep lobbing shells in, and 9 times out of 10 they hit something. Or just sitting ducks. Just hit a truck. Where are you going to get another truck? You almost have to steal one to replace it, if you can find some place to steal one from.
By the middle of May, the long, deadly winter has loosened its grip on Italy. As the Allied armies in the south open their spring offensive, the trapped men of Anzio decide to break out of Kesselring's steel handcuffs.
It's hard to explain to your man when you're running out of excuses. It's a fact that we are retreating on every single front. We are retreating in Russia, in Italy, and the Allies are getting ready to invade France. There's no way to get us any more troops, or weapons, or food. Sometimes you just feel like you have been abandoned. The troops are so demoralized that they just give up. You can't talk to them anymore. There are some boys you talk to, and you just can't get an answer. Completely demoralized. One day I tried to take a boy with me on a mission through the lines, and he refused to go. I ask him why he won't go, and he tells me, my wife and daughter are both blind due to an Allied air raid. I lost my home, and they lost their eyesight, and I can't give anymore, and I'm not willing to give anymore.
Now we begin to get prisoners, boys 14 years old. They're throwing them in to try and stop the gap. There's this one red-headed boy. He says New York has been bombed. I ask him how he knows, and he says he heard it on the German radio.
The breakout is complete. After 2 days of the most vicious fighting, Cisterna falls on May 25th. On that same red-letter day, a long-awaited event occurs. The troops at Anzio finally link up with the American Fifth Army, which has broken through the Gustav Line. For the Allies, the tide is turning, but not without cost. The 6th Corps suffers more than 4,000 casualties in a week.
One time, we crawled through the enemy lines to capture some ammunition. But this time, we are expected, and we don't just roll them up. Heavy shooting starts, and I get it. When I come to and see what's happened, I start to run. I don't even have the strength to crawl, but I run all the way. It isn't physical strength that saves you. It's just the desire to live, the desire to go home again.
When you break through, it's great. The morale is sky high. Now all anybody can think of is Rome.
Under increasing pressure, the entire German front begins to break. By June 2nd, the Germans are in full retreat, and the Allies are sweeping victoriously north to Rome. June 4th, in a splendid riot of welcome, the Eternal City is liberated.
I guess the hardest part of the whole thing for me is Rome. After all that way and everything else, they don't let us march through like the other troops. Our uniforms don't look so good, so we have to march around the outskirts. Naturally, they want the best uniforms for the parade. It's really kind of rough on the boys, though, after all of that.
Ludwig Vogel, after being evacuated from the hospital in Rome, is moved to one in northern Italy, and finally to one near his home in Munich. Awarded an Iron Cross, he doesn't recover from his wounds until after the war's end. Paul Schrader later goes to Marseille, fights his way through France, and wins 7 battle stars before coming home. Anzio was, in the opinion of many experts, an expensive mistake. Eventually, it was rescued by the army it tried to rescue.
pilot was considered quite an honor. The wearing of the red beret and wings was quite the envy of the conventional Tommy. However, in the next war, I know 3 people that are going to be missing. Me and the 2 chaps chasing me.
Henry Waltag piloted a glider to Arnhem in 1944. Today, he is a real estate agent in Beverly Hills, California. In 1944, Jacob Hoppenthal, a corporal in an artillery division, fought near Arnhem. Today, he is a lead man in a sheet metal shop in Southern California.
We had the feeling then that we had to win the war, and we felt we could. Our morale was good. It was only when we were alone, separated from others, that we would begin to lose confidence.
Near the Dutch town of Arnhem, the lives of Sergeant Waltag and Corporal Hoppenthal came together for a brief moment. Now, 2 fighting men, 1 Englishman, 1 German, relive that moment in history. I'm Jim Bishop. In late August 1944, General Eisenhower gives the go-ahead to Field Marshal Montgomery to launch a thrust through the lowlands of Holland and leapfrog the Rhine, Germany's last natural defense barrier. For this, one of the most difficult airdrops ever planned is put into operation. Operation Market Garden, as it is coded, calls for the laying of a carpet of airborne troops along a narrow corridor extending 60 miles into Holland, from Eindhoven in the south to Arnhem in the north. The 2nd British Army will then push up this carpet, opening a passage into Germany through the northern plains. With Arnhem in Allied hands, the German Siegfried Line is outflanked, Holland cut in 2, and the Rhine River crossed in a single dramatic leap. It is a daring plan with strong elements of risk, but if it should succeed, the war could possibly end within a matter of weeks. Spearheading this attack will be the crack troops of the Allied Airborne Army. Attached to the 1st British Air Landing Brigade is glider pilot Sergeant Henry Waltag.
My job is to take the troops and land them behind the enemy lines. In other words, instead of going to war by bus or truck or ship, one goes to war by glider. Rumor has it that General Eisenhower is not in favor of this at all. It is Montgomery who has insisted on the operation, which is very daring. It's going to be sticky, you know, but what the hell.
Stationed in the Netherlands are 400,000 Germans. The Arnhem area is held by elements of the 9th and 10th SS Panzer Divisions. The number and quality is much greater than Allied intelligence suspects. One of the Wehrmacht soldiers ordered to defend Holland is Corporal Jacob Hoppenthal of the 17th Artillery Division.
I am in Breda, which is a replacement center. As a Waffen-SS, we are thought of as a special force, something like the Marines or the paratroopers. I can't say I feel better than any other soldier. We all have the same fighting spirit. My job is to act as a messenger. Sometimes I ride a bicycle, sometimes a motorcycle.
An essential part of the Arnhem defenses is its many anti-aircraft emplacements. These, along with the nearby Luftwaffe bases, make an air penetration particularly difficult. D-Day for Operation Market Garden has been set for September 17th. The battle plan specifies that the 1st British Airborne Division, under the command of Major General Urquhart, will take the bridge at Arnhem. The American 82nd and 101st Airborne Divisions under Generals Gavin and Taylor will take the bridges to the south at Nijmegen and Eindhoven. Once these strategic bridges are taken intact, it is estimated that the British Second Army should reach Arnhem within 2 days. On a matter of weather, Allied intelligence is optimistic. Conditions in early autumn are considered reliable.
Before takeoff, our cooks do us really proud. We consume many cups of hot tea, this time spiced with rum. It tastes absolutely wonderful. I am carrying members of the 1st Airborne Division, veterans of the North African campaign, and all very fine fellows. They march smartly into the glider and sit there, nervously awaiting takeoff.
Sunday, September 17th is clear and sunny, with a forecast of more of the same. At 8 a.m., 4,600 British and American aircraft are readied at 22 airfields in England.
Day as we head for the North Sea. The English countryside has never looked more beautiful. The boys feel fine now and paint obscene words on the sides of the glider. Some of the tow lines break and 4 or 5 gliders go down. There's very little you can do to get out of a glider. There's no way to escape. I wouldn't mind going down over England now, but not over the North Sea.
Crossing is made with little interference. As one pilot puts it, it is a piece of cake.
I look up suddenly and see aircraft and gliders approaching. What is it all about? Where are they coming from? The gliders swinging back off the big planes reminds me of beginners who can fly very well. Everybody watches. Then we realize that the men in the planes are Tommies, and the cannons begin.
The leading gliders have pulled off and are making their way to the landing zones. It's rather like Piccadilly Circus. There are fighters above us, bombers that tow us, and Dakotas dropping parachute troops. It's rather congested, to say the least. Where shall we land? We just cannot go down willy-nilly. The best thing to do is to get out of this traffic jam pretty quickly. I find a spot, put on full flaps, and head my nose straight down.
Of the 359 gliders that have taken off from England, only 40 failed to land on Dutch soil. It has been a textbook drop. September 17th, 1944. The British paratroopers have landed 6 to 8 miles to the west of Arnhem due to the heavy German flak concentrations around the city. Men of the 1st Parachute Brigade set off for the highway bridge straddling the Rhine. Other units in the first drop will remain near the landing zones until the second lift has arrived.
It is left to our discretion as to what we will do. We can either try to make our way back or stay with the chaps we've brought in. We decide to stay. There's bound to be a bit of excitement.
Germans recover quickly from their initial surprise. Reinforcements are rushed in. Orders go out that the bridges are to be held at all costs and that further landings can be expected and must be firmly resisted. The invaders' intentions are confirmed when the Germans accidentally discover a complete copy of the Allied battle plan. The warning on the first page, not to be taken into the air, had been ignored by a nameless casualty. The British have managed to obtain a foothold at the southern end of the Arnhem Bridge. But as darkness falls and fresh German reinforcements arrive, it becomes evident that the northern end will be more difficult to secure. In the Nijmegen area, the American 82nd Airborne has managed to take its preliminary objectives. The town of Graves has been captured and the Maas River crossed. At Eindhoven, the American 101st Airborne has approached the town on schedule, but has been stopped by strong German resistance just south of it. Units of the British Second Army have crossed the Dutch border and have begun their drive northwards, preceded by rocket-firing Typhoons. Operations further south are being carried out with relative degrees of success. The situation at Arnhem is growing hourly more difficult. The streets have begun to resemble a battlefield as guns and equipment are moved into private dwellings. The fighting is becoming vicious as German reinforcements and armored equipment pour into the area. Communications among the hard-hit British units is fragmentary, but it is apparent that the bridge is being held against overwhelming odds. Reinforcements are now vital if the bridgehead is to be maintained. The next day, in the early afternoon, the second airdrop takes place. Armed with the Allied battle plan, the Germans are prepared. Opposition is heavy. Many of the parachute troops are picked off as they descend. Others land in trees where their lines become hopelessly entangled. One of the British officers calls it a grossly untidy situation.
Still they come. Everybody grabs a rifle. The planes are so low, one can shoot at them from point-blank range. We have captured a glider full of men and equipment. They are young, most of them. I'm curious to see them. I almost want to touch them, to feel what the enemy is like. I've never seen the enemy before. We say nothing to them. Finally, our sergeant major takes them away.
The fighting to the west of Arnhem is now house to house, garden to garden, cellar to cellar. Apprehension spreads among the beleaguered British units. Ammunition is running low. The 1st British Airborne stands to be wiped out if more reinforcements do not arrive soon.
We have been fighting without food for 3 days. Most of the supplies parachuted to us have been grabbed by the Germans, who now occupy our drop zones.
There's much fighting going on not far from us, but our knowledge of the enemy's movements is confined to the settings on our guns. We make a little adjustment to the left or to the right, but we can't really see what we are shooting.
The British grip on the Arnhem Bridge is slipping. German tanks push into the area at a swift rate. The British force has been whittled down. Their one hope is that they can hold on until Second Army units push up from the south.
We are being gradually overrun by the Germans. We are here without food, or water, or ammunition, or tanks. We have nothing but 7-pounders and small arms. I can't call the Germans cowards. They should come in and overpower us, but they don't.
By September 21st, the bridge at Nijmegen has been crossed and British land forces reach the southern bank of the Rhine, opposite Arnhem. At this moment, the German panzers launch a furious counterattack. Are forced off the bridgehead, and German tanks push across unopposed.
There are Germans across the street. One of them gets on a loudspeaker and calls for us to surrender.
Gentlemen of the 1st Airborne Division, you are gallant, wonderful soldiers. However, you are completely surrounded. Your officers are captured. If you come out with your hands up, we will treat you according.
As this crowd talks on, we gather up every available weapon and at a given signal, let go with everything we've got.
The remnants of the 1st British Airborne are now confined to a 450-acre perimeter just outside of Arnhem. There is the smell of battle everywhere. The Germans have nicknamed it Der Kessel, or the Cauldron, because it is under constant bombardment. On the evening of September 21st, General Urquhart sends an emergency communique to Allied headquarters. Balance of division in very tight perimeter. Our casualties heavy. Resources stretched to utmost. Relief within 24 hours vital.
I have lost two of my best friends. I saw one of them just after he had been hit by a shrapnel. I said, "John, how are you doing? What do you want me to tell your wife?" He did not speak, he was dead. At that moment, I could feel anger welling inside me. I had lost someone close, someone who had been with me a long time.
During the last 3 days, every effort has been made to link up units of the British Second Army with the battered defenders at Arnhem, but without success. Now plans for the evacuation of 1st Airborne are put into effect. The 1st Polish Parachute Brigade has obtained a beachhead on the Rhine. Together with units of the British 43rd Infantry Division, they push toward the Cauldron, where they will assist the 1st Airborne in its withdrawal.
We've been told to destroy whatever weapons we are going to leave behind and take only our personal weapons with us. We crawl on our bellies to the main road. We are going around in circles, trying to find our way through to the river. A figure steps out of the shadows and says, "I say, you chaps, are you for the river?" And we answer, "Yes." "Well, follow that white line," he says. They have laid white tape on the ground to guide us to the river.
.100 men are able to reach the safety of the south bank. By morning, further evacuation is impossible. German machine guns sweep the river. On September 26th, panzers move into the Cauldron unopposed. The once peaceful city of Arnhem lies in ruins. Sergeant Henry Waltag, wounded at Arnhem, will escape to England, where he will spend the 8 remaining months of the war. Corporal Jacob Hoppenthal will later fight in Czechoslovakia and at Lubeck, Germany, where he is taken prisoner by the British. Of the 10,000 paratroopers who have landed north of the Rhine, over 1,100 will remain behind forever, and more than 6,000 are captured by the Germans. Operation Market Garden was divided into 2 parts. Market was the airdrop. Garden was the ground operation. The first failed. The second was a success. The men at Arnhem, in the words of Churchill, have performed a feat of arms which will be remembered and recounted as long as the virtues of courage and resolution have power to move the hearts of men.